I think we will see you next in India also very soon. In case you'd like to take a 2 minutes break, that is perfectly fine. And we can just resume very quickly. Yes. Hi, everyone. We'd like you to turn on your video and audio now as suitable to you, especially the videos for the time being. And we have Mr. Rawat joining us. He's the CEO and Secretary General. Warm welcome to you, sir. And
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hearty welcome to all of you.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Very well. Good to see. Good to see indeed. Yes.
Hey, Manoj, nice to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you indeed.
Good
So how's
afternoon.
weather? Good afternoon, Krishna. How are you?
It says the video, you cannot start the video because the host has stopped it.
Hi. Who is unable to start the video?
This is Munish.
Uh, 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 I'm really sorry, but at this particular moment, we cannot accept participants' video sharing at the moment.
Okay.
There will be a segment in the Q&A session at around 5:30 p.m. IST, when we'll be, keeping it open for the audience at large to engage on the discussions.
Got it. Got it. I thought it was for us. Okay.
No worries. Thank you for checking. Sir, we are just we can start. I think it's 4 o'clock now. We can perhaps take a 30-second or a minute more. And we are allowing other audience to now join in and chime in for the webinar.
So all have joined. I'm very glad. So we have people from US, from UK, from Sri Lanka, from Poland, from Mumbai. Mr. Srihari, I think you are based in Bangalore, I believe.
Yeah, that's right, Manoj. So
Fantastic. And amazing. And Ireland, yes. So I think we all of us are passing through the winter now. So so how is weather in Dowd, in Ireland? All good?
it's pretty cold here, Manoj, I have to say. I do like my cold showers in the morning, every morning, to try and wake myself up, connect with the Vedic nerve, and get ready to spark a bit of inspiration in anything I do. But I
Fantastic.
have to say, getting in that cold shower this morning was not fun.
Yes, I liked it. Charge yourself up for success. You have displayed this beautiful book.
Thank you.
Yes, it's quite inspiring. Yes. So thank you so much. And I think it's now time is uh, four. Yes, 4 o'clock now. 1 second. Yes. So it's 4 o'clock. Good afternoon. Good evening. Good morning to all our distinguished guests, those who have joined us today's IOD global webinar. Depending on your location, the time zone, and the country. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Institute of Directors India, it is my pleasure to welcome you all, our distinguished members, associates, and the IOD India global family to the third edition of IOD Global Webinar Series. As you may be knowing, IOD is the Board Research and Advisory Wing has been hosting a boardroom webinar series at least one in every business quarter to address some of the topical issues and today's critical subjects, focusing on independent directors, corporate governance, sustainability, and ESG, net zero goals, financial literacy, workforce culture, diversity, inclusion, and so on. And as such, the webinar is focusing on a topic that is reshaping the boardroom worldwide, and that is AI and cybersecurity in the boardroom, unveiling the future of AI. And we are also delighted that today's webinar is joined by a diverse group of distinguished guests from various parts of the globe, including India, USA, UK, Europe, UAE, Singapore, Australia, Maldives, Mauritius, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Middle East, and many other countries. A hearty welcome to each one of you. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a growing global conversation about AI, its possibilities, challenges, and uncertainties. While some people see AI as an enabler, and while others, they view it as a disruptor of growth. And we call it as AI, we call it as an AI uncertainty. So there is a bit of power play going on among various organizations to become the leader in AI delivery. So the question for the leaders is how AI can become a force for good and how it can bridge the gaps in critical business domains And how can we democratize AI knowledge, enabling immersive learning and practical case studies for all. Just as AI, the air is essential for our survival, similarly, air is also equally important and equally essential for business growth. So here the air means AI race. So to thrive, organizations must embrace AI-driven strategies to enhance productivity. And at the same time, it is also equally important to safeguard the company's cybersecurity with the ever-evolving landscape of cyber threats. It is crucial that the organization's defense are robust and it is up to date. Today, we are privileged to have with us an exceptional panel of speakers who will shed light on these pressing issues. To begin with, Ms. Rama Vedashri, who is a former CEO of Data Security Council of India. She has over 35 years of industry experience and currently serving on multiple boards. And the second, the gentleman, Mr. Chris Bott, he is based in UK and he is a board evaluator and governance expert specializing in cyber risk consultancy. We have Krishna Jarek, who is a renowned innovation strategist from Poland, and currently she is focusing largely on AI-driven growth. And she brings her lot of experience during her time in Deloitte. So where she was head of chief innovation officer, and she was looking after the emerging technologies. We have Mr. Nimit Javeri, who is a managing partner. Managing partner at the Bitsco Cybertech, which is a leading cyber security solutions firm based in Mumbai. And we have Sasi Prabha Dharmadasa, who is a CISO at BoardPack. She's also an ISO 27001 2022 lead auditor. And to moderate this session, we are pleased to have Mr. Sri Hari Murthy, who is a CEO and founder of Factory.ai, quite interesting name, who will connect the dots between manufacturing and the technology. And so following the panel, we will also hear an exclusive keynote address by Ms. Renee Wynn from US. She had joined us all the way from US. It's early morning, who is a former NASA CIO, and currently she is a global board leader holding multiple board positions. She'll be delivering a keynote on integrating AI and cybersecurity in boardrooms, a strategic blueprint for global directors. And finally, let me also introduce to a CEO, coach, speaker, author, and a valued member of IOD family, Mr. Dowes Gordon, who is based in Ireland. He'll be anchoring the today's session, and he will guide the discussions to ensure meaningful insights and transformative solutions. A big thank you to our partners for hosting this webinar possible. To begin with, the strategic partner NASDAQ, and based in US. And here may I also request all our members, the guests, if someone would be interested to download their white paper on AI in the boardroom. So it is available on our website. It can be downloaded from there. And we have institutional partners, that is BitScore Cybertech LLP, Boardpack from Sri Lanka, and Gujarat Fluorochemicals from India. And we have knowledge partners, Helix Consulting Limited, Taxman. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's unlock the secrets of AI success with our distinguished leaders and experts. Over to Dodge. Thank you.
Thanks, Manoj, and welcome everybody. As Manoj said, I do various different things, but one of the things I did for quite some time was I was a radio presenter, and I think that's why I was brought in to help in terms of comparing and emceeing in events, amazing events like this with some great speakers. And I speak a lot on stage, and just to give all the speakers a bit of confidence for themselves, I always say before you're about to speak, put your hand on your heart. So I would say, I am Doug Gordon, I am my heart. Please let me connect with the hearts of the audience in order to bless rather than impress. And that way getting myself out of my head self into my heart self. So I'm coming from that place of love. So all I want to do is add value to all of you here today. And if I make a mistake, which I may well do because of some very complicated names that I have to pronounce in a minute, I apologize profusely if I get them wrong. I'm going to give them a good go. But I have practiced them a few times, but it is early in the morning here and you never know. So I just want to say a big thank you again to the Institute of Directors of India for bringing together such an amazing bunch of speakers. And we're going to be going through the speakers in a minute, just to give you, I mean, Manoj has basically introduced half my introduction already, which saves me a lot of time, which is fantastic. But a big namaste to everybody, and welcome to the third webinar of the 2024 Boardroom webinar series by the Institute of Directors of India, where innovation meets tradition, ideas converge, and strategies evolve. The Boardroom webinar series is supported by, as you saw earlier, the strategic partner NASDAQ, institutional partners BitScore, Cybertech, Boardpack, and Gujarat Fluorochemicals Limited, and knowledge partners Helix Consulting Limited and Taxman. As we stand at the crossroads of technological advancement and corporate governance, the stakes for board members and executives are higher than ever. In a world of rapidly escalating cyber threats and AI-driven transformations, ensuring robust cybersecurity while leveraging AI for governance is no longer optional, it's essential. So today, our distinguished panel of speakers will shed light on various topics, three key main ones. Firstly, strengthening cybersecurity frameworks at the board level. Secondly, the evolving responsibilities of directors in this digital era. And thirdly, practical strategies for integrating AI into governance and decision-making processes. In this webinar, our distinguished panel of experts will explore how you can enhance cybersecurity, the critical responsibilities of board members, and how to seamlessly integrate AI-driven solutions into strategic decision-making. The Institute of Directors of India has prepared, sorry, just get my thing up there, has prepared an insightful discussion that bridges cutting-edge technology with strategic governance. So let's dive into it. Firstly, we have a special address, and to commence today's session, I would like to introduce the esteemed Ms. Rama Vedashri, former CEO of the Data Security Council of India. She's going to set the context for the session and deliver a special address on the theme of elevating governance in AI and cybersecurity in the boardroom. She's currently serving as an independent director on the board of Geo Financial Services Limited and Geo Payment Solutions Limited, and brings over 35 years of diverse industry experience. Her distinguishing career includes roles as director at Microsoft Global Services and vice president of GE India. She also serves as vice president of NASCOM, leading initiatives in domestic IT, e-governance, and smart cities. Over to you, Ms. Vidashri.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Manoj and Mr. Doug. First of all, thanks to Institute of Directors for this opportunity to join this distinguished panel of speakers and share my insights on, why cybersecurity is such a strategic imperative for every digital enterprise and what is the role of members in the board. While I've spent more than 35 years in the technology industry and industry bodies like NASSCOM and Data Security Council, where probably I engaged more with the technology provider ecosystem, whether it is the global platform companies, global services companies, and a huge bunch of innovative technology startups from India. Last 2-3 years, I've also had the opportunity to get a little more deeper insight into the challenges that large enterprises, particularly regulated enterprises, whether it's in the power sector, telecom, financial services, what do they face when they are driving a very fast-paced digitization strategy? So I will be first to set the context. Why is it that, for an audience hosted by Institute of Directors, none of it is new? Every enterprise in India across verticals, whether it is the business to consumer segments like retail, online retail, whether it is healthcare, particularly post pandemic, financial services across, whether it's insurance, capital markets, banking, higher education and K-12 space, all of them have been driving a digitization strategy. One second, please. And particularly post-pandemic, we have seen a phase of digitization that probably would have taken us 10 to 15 years in the past. Every vertical is adopting a bunch of frontier technologies. While this webinar is focused more on AI and maybe the associated generative AI, there is a bunch of frontier technologies, whether it is robotics in manufacturing side, robotics in the healthcare because of the operation room theaters and the robotic assisted surgeries that are happening. So there is a bunch of emerging technologies that are being adopted. There's a whole lot that is happening in manufacturing, in the power and the utilities sector because of the way OT is getting integrated with IT. Increasingly, when you look at any enterprise, large, medium, small, when they're coming up with a product or a service, including public sector or state and central governments, when they're offering a new citizen services, it's almost digital first on the mobile platform and on maybe cloud enabled platforms. Some of them are, many of the new services that are coming to consumers and citizens are not just digital first, they're digital only. Like there is no alternative on ground service offering for many of these. And increasingly, we are seeing that even traditional manufacturing organizations, power sector organizations, where there's a whole lot of industrial control systems or operational technologies, they are going digital. They're infusing a lot of the new emerging technologies into their legacy systems. Just to set the context, World Economic Forum publishes every January a global risks report with a very large global perception survey. It's due for the next one was due in January 2025, but I'm going with the last version of the report, where they do a risk perception survey worldwide, and they've rated cybercrime and cyber insecurity, as they call it, as the fourth biggest global risk in the short term, which is 2 years, and in the long term, which is over 10 years. Surprisingly, in the last year, misinformation or disinformation, which is AI generated misinformation or disinformation, which also influences a lot of the cyber influence operations, not just the cybersecurity attacks and breaches, but there's a lot of cyber influence that happens by certain bunch of threat actors that got bumped up to the first. This is where there is a lot of abuse of AI in these kind of campaigns. And we are also seeing that the new risk of, while every enterprise, every business, every government is driving a strategy to harness AI for new innovative services, there are a whole bunch of startups which are innovating on AI and every other frontier technology, as we call it. The adverse outcomes of AI has become a long-term risk in this global risk report, and which is important to remember, because when you talk about risk and governance and the role of board, I think anything about adverse outcome of any new technology that you infuse into your business is something that needs to be looked into from a governance and a risk perspective. perspective. And another interesting thing, because I've spent more than 6 years as a Data Security Council CEO, which works very closely in the cybersecurity domain, there are a bunch of large enterprises, thanks to the kind of business they do and the regulatory domain in which they work in, and the consumer expectations. They've been investing very deeply in cyber technologies, and there is a certain level of maturity and cyber resilience. But there is also now a whole bunch of small and medium organizations, some sectors like healthcare and education, probably they're even mid-sized or a small, an MSME as we call it in the manufacturing side. They're underinvested in cyber, not just in India, but in other geographies. And their cyber resilience is actually declining. So we are seeing a widening gap. It's almost like cyber haves and cyber have nots. And that's also a worry, because no enterprise works in isolation in the digital world. They do not work in a silo. They engage with a lot of ecosystem partners. And the biggest threat that we have seen in the last 2, 3 years, when you look at any new cyber attack that has happened or a breach that has happened, the vulnerabilities in the third parties or in your vendors or in the supply chain ecosystem, which is probably supplying some innocuous software product, or somebody is managing your data center or network, services companies who are rendering you as the new a way in which to attack the actual enterprise organizations and amplify the threat, because a services organization or a software product company is penetrated into across the domains or across multiple organizations. This is the biggest threat that we are beginning to see with, because traditionally in any sector, when there's a large enterprise, let's say there's a large auto company, the strength of that large auto enterprise is also derived from all the ancillary auto companies which service that company, right? So the supply chain partners were always the biggest strength to any successful enterprise. Whereas in the digital world, in the cyber world, the supply chain partners are not only your assets to drive your digitization strategy, but they're also becoming probably the weakest link, where any vulnerability that happens in one of your supply chain partners, even a level 3, level 2, level 3 supply chain partner, can impact your own cyber resilience, right? In terms of AI, machine learning, or the large language models or the generative AI, if you look at any new cyber technology or cyber product that is or service that has been launched in the last 3, 4, 5 years, you will always see that it is architected on top of AI and machine learning and some deep learning algorithms, right? So AI is fundamental and foundation to not just for all your digitization products and services, but also for your cyber technology stack that you're doing, whether for your threat intelligence, threat mitigation, and incident response and all of that. Now, the downside of all of these technologies is also that the AI, ML, and the large language models are equally accessible to the threat actors and the adversaries in adversaries in the digital space, and they're also building their capabilities. And you will see a lot of the malware, ransomware attacks that are launched, on a global scale, or impacting multiple sectors or multiple geographies, are typically leveraging the capabilities of AI. We are also seeing a huge cybersecurity talent and skills gap, not just in the provider and in the technology industry, but across every vertical. And increasingly, if there is pressure on enhancing your cyber resilience and investing in cyber technologies, cybersecurity technologies for defense, for trustworthy AI, and all of that, the rising costs, almost, if I may say, it's almost exorbitant for a small and medium entity to be able to continuously invest in cyber technologies, because it's no longer a one-time project. They need to invest year on year, including many organizations even cannot afford the cyber insurance, and we will see why that is underinvested. All of this works in the overall milieu of evolving regulations, both at a national level and sectoral level, particularly in cybersecurity. When you look at the threat landscape, the threat actors, most of us know whether there's an organized crime, there are hacktivists, or the ones individual people who are launching attacks, creating leveraging the vulnerabilities and or the zero-day vulnerabilities as it's called, the insider threat. But the last 2 3 years, given the geopolitical situation, we are beginning to see the state aligned or state sponsored attacks also becoming the biggest risk. If you read any of few of the global threat intelligence reports, there is enough to worry about the state. Every national security apparatus of India and other countries are worried about the state aligned threat actors, or sometimes probably even state sponsored. Now, in all of this, I'm drawing on a report published by my former organization. Just to be able to summarize, I'm using this. What has been the kind of cyber attacks that have happened in the last 2 3 years, including 2024? Many of these are not just the DDoS attacks and ransomware attacks. Zero-day exploits are exploiting any vulnerability in any product, hardware products or software products, even before the OEM or the software provider knows about it. Somebody gets to know the zero day and they exploit that to launch attacks. And often, because the footprint of that product is across enterprises, the zero day exploits create havoc across multiple geographies and multiple sectors. We are also beginning to see the post pandemic, particularly during the COVID time. We have seen R&D workloads being attacked because a lot of R&D moved to the cloud, and there has been the cyber espionage, particularly around the vaccines and all of that. So we have been seeing different kind of attacks. Supply chain attacks is one of the biggest problem that we have seen. In the next wave of threats, there's a recent report that my former organization, Data Security Council, published, and they've taken a shot at what could be the next wave of threats for 2025. Many of them are persistent threats that have been persisting. But there's a new one which the cyber or the technocrats in the cyber domain are worrying about, the way quantum is picking up. And are we ready for the post quantum world? That's a new worry that both regulators and the industry are looking at. We are also looking at supply chain compromises being one of the biggest worry, because sometimes you have a very small provider, which could be a service provider or a product provider, which probably is doing some innocuous task for you, but a vulnerability in that can create havoc in your own enterprise. I think that continuously, and AI powered, whether it's malware and any other attacks, because AI will allow the threat actor to be able to amplify the attack in a very short span across multiple enterprises and across multiple geographies. And post-COVID, the way the enterprise has moved, the technology infrastructure has moved to the edge, the edge devices, which is devices in the hands of citizens, devices in the hands of end users who are probably not just so technology savvy. And in any smart city, in any one of the well managed condominiums or residential societies, there is so much IoT deployed, whether it is for fire detection, whether it is for surveillance, and whether it's for CCTV cameras exploiting these IoT devices. So there's a new wave of threats. Many of them are the ones which we have already seen. So I wanted to spend more time on, given that it's a platform of Institute of Directors, on the role of boards. Overall, any board, whether it is in the US, Europe, or in India, they've always had a fiduciary oversight role, that their fiduciary role, board role is always a fiduciary management role. They've always had a role in enterprise governance. That's why geopolitical risk, monetary risk, interest rate risk, all of that gets discussed in most board meetings, right? And if there is a geopolitical risk, what is the impact on the sector, on the country, on the enterprise? So, assessing systemic risk across all parameters of geopolitics, economy, financial, operational is always done. Boards have always had a role of stakeholder management, which includes your consumers, communities, citizens, and maybe regulators, other than your own employees and your partners and other things, right? Now, given that cybersecurity has become the biggest risk for every enterprise, because every enterprise is a data and innovation led and is a digital enterprise, and whether it could be large, small, or It could be public, it could be private, it could be in a critical information infrastructure sector, or it could be in a retail, or it could be in healthcare. So once you say that cybersecurity is the one of the big risks, it needs to get integrated into the overall enterprise governance and enterprise business risk assessment and its mitigation. The way they can play a role is be proactive in providing leadership and oversight on the digitization strategy. What is the digital transformation roadmap for the current year, for the next 3 years, and what outcomes and investments that are being made? And is the people capability aligned with the digitization strategy that the enterprise is doing, right? And boards have always played a role in uplifting the focus of the organization from just near-term profits to look at the longer-term interests and the way you're serving the communities and your consumers, and maybe at a country level. Here, I think they can play a leadership role on how can you get the digitization transformation journey apart from profit linked and servicing your shareholders and investors and employees. Can it look at a roadmap for making your digitization linked to trustworthy principles and cyber resilience principles, a principles based approach to this? And any new digital initiative or any new large program always comes to the board, either to be briefed or maybe to be reviewed and approved. Sometimes could be just a briefing, if it is a regular program. If it's a big mega program, it usually comes for a review and approval to look at a new digital initiative from the lens of a cyber risk. What is the regulatory requirement? Maybe it could be for data protection, it could be for privacy, it could be for AI regulations. Let's say you're servicing customer segments in Europe. There, you already have to comply to the AI Act there. So what is the regulatory requirements impacted by the initiative that you're pursuing at your company level? And always keep consumer trust centric to the digital initiative or a program that you're driving. So start transitioning from treating cybersecurity or AI or any of these emerging technologies not just as a technical risk, which is the purview of a CIO, CTO, or a CISO, but look at it as a primary business and operational risk. So where can boards help? How can they help? The first thing I would say is they can help by the board members themselves getting little familiar. Every board member need not be a technocrat, right? Will not be a technocrat, because the boards will always have diverse skills. Now look at the broader digitization strategy that the enterprise and the sector in which that enterprise and the country in which that enterprise is doing business understand the digitization strategy, because it's important to know what is happening at a sectoral level so that you can look actively for the best practices in the sector that the company can adopt. Look at emerging technologies and their risks, and keep oversight on what is the evolving cyber and data protection regulations in all the geographies in which you do business. You may be headquartered in India, but you may be servicing Middle East, you may be servicing Australia, Europe, and other things. Here, the way to do this is you can ask your own management teams to brief you, or you can request for a briefing session from some experts, and that is always an opportunity or the option for board members. Look at guiding the management teams to look to transition from a cyber security approach, which is always about investing in technology, new technologies, or putting budgets behind whatever new technology that you need to deploy to mitigate the risk, but move towards a cyber resilience program. Because when you say that you're chasing goals of cyber resilience across people, process, and technology, because you need to look at, are you cyber resilient not just from a process, but from a people capability perspective and from the technology perspective. So I think that makes you a better, lets you track your cyber maturity in a better way, because the cybersecurity is always about investing technology and complying to some regulation, and probably that is not adequate enough. And also look at cyber resilience and governance as something in continuum, because mostly enterprises have always been used to drive a big ticket project. It has a 1 year time window, 3 year time window, or a 5 year time window if you're, let's say, building a big airport or you're building a big manufacturing plant. Whereas in cyber, there is nothing one time. Maybe there is an initial budget, and maybe setting up a SOC is a project for the priority for the year. But the SOC needs to be invested, upgraded, people capacity. So it's not a one-time project, and most budgets and things come to committees of the board. Supporting those budgets, I think, is very important, and that's where understanding the cyber risk is important. And also look at having continuous benchmarking and encourage the CXO team, the management team, which is managing cyber and technology risk, to look at benchmarking of the cyber management, so that you look at your cyber risk management, is it commensurate with the new risks for the sector? If you don't do that match, you probably made some investments, but the risk has got accentuated, but your cyber risk management and technology investments have not seen, you have not improved on that. That's important. Always in cyber, looking at what are the industry accepted frameworks and risk quantification methods, so that you don't operate in a silo and come up with your own things. Anyway, most regulators are asking for this. So I see most large enterprises, but I think we have a lot to do when it comes to small and medium enterprises, some sectors like healthcare. How do you look at adopting some industry accepted frameworks? And some of them can be global, or some of them at the national level. Similarly, the biggest focus, biggest takeaway in this session from my session would be, I would say, is attention to third-party risks. I think I can't reiterate again and again this, because the third-party vulnerabilities in your vendor ecosystem, in the entire ecosystem which you integrate, because in a digital world, you are interfacing through APIs, through solutions mounted on the cloud platforms. You're hosting a lot of your workloads on data centers and all of that. So attention to third-party risk. At periodic intervals, based on your CTO's priorities and CISO's priorities, look at scenario planning, look at case studies of breaches or attacks that have happened in the last 1 year. Take the learnings out of it and try and do those kind of scenario planning within your own enterprise. And one or two board members can participate in that also. And most importantly, not just do it cross-functional within your enterprise, but all the critical business application workloads managed by third-party partners should be part of your tabletop exercises and your cyber drills. And every board is bothered about succession planning of the C-suite, of the CXOs, particularly CEO, CFO, other key management personnel. I think the attention for talent pool and succession planning of people who manage cyber risks, the cybersecurity CISO's team, some attention needs to be there too at a board level, and have cybersecurity briefings and maybe reviews at regular periodic intervals. It could be, twice a year, quarterly, depending on the company in which. This is where I would say making cyber risk part of the enterprise business risk and governance, make it central to the enterprise risk assessment and risk materiality that is continuously assessed by every CRO, particularly in regulated. How do you give that equal attention or maybe more attention to cyber is something that I would like to close my session.
Rama, thank you so much for such an amazing speech. And there's some really, really good insights there. So big, big thank you to you for that. And I have to say, it is so important, ladies and gentlemen, even myself, even just touching on different things, such as someone, even a friend, sending you a link. You need to be very careful of these days, as I found out myself. So we're moving on to the panel session, and we will be talking about the future of boardrooms, embedding AI and cybersecurity into organizational DNA. We got a fantastic lineup of speakers. So we've got 5 speakers, and then we've got a facilitator for this particular part segment. And we're going to be talking about the latest trends in cybersecurity, compliance, regulatory frameworks, cybersecurity ratings, and also share visionary strategies and best practices to empower you to lead with foresight and resilience in an ever-evolving digital era. So I'm going to just welcome each of the speakers individually. I'm going to start with Mr. Chris Burt, who is a seasoned board evaluator and risk management expert with extensive expertise in governance and cyber risk consulting. As founder of Halex Consulting, he provides independent board performance reviews and risk management services. And he works where he was also the co-founder and principal author of the Risk Coalition, a not-for-profit think tank focused on enhancing risk management practices. So a big thank you for Mr. Burt for coming along. And secondly, we also have Christina Jarek, and Christina is a renowned innovation strategist with a strong focus on smart growth and AI-driven innovation. As the founder of Booster of Innovation, she leads organizations in harnessing the power of AI to drive transformational change. Previously, Christina served as the Chief Innovation Officer at Deloitte and Innovation Lead at ING Bank, where she spearheaded cutting-edge initiatives to enhance business performance and customer experience. Christina, welcome to you as well. Thirdly, we have Mr. Nimit Jahavari, and he is the Managing Director of BitScore Cybertech, a leading cybersecurity and technology solutions firm based in Mumbai in India. And he has extensive experience in cybersecurity risk and technology strategy, and he's helped organizations across industries strengthen their digital security frameworks and safeguard against emerging cyber threats. Welcome to you as well, Nimit. Fourthly, it's our final speaker. We've got Ms. Sashi Dharamdasa, and Ms. Sashi brings over 20 years of experience working in banking and finance, with specific expertise in banking regulation on governance and risk resilience. She serves as CISO at BoardPAC, and she has led the Sri Lankan government's policy initiative to assess the cyber readiness and critical infrastructure, a World Bank-funded project that preceded the formulation of the Cybersecurity Act. So a big thank you for you being here as well, Shashi. And then finally, we have our moderator, Srihari Murthy. And Mr. Murthy is the CEO and founder of Factory AI. He has over 15 years of experience operating at the intersection of manufacturing and technology. At Factory AI, he and his team develop software solutions aimed at enhancing productivity and efficiency for manufacturers by digitizing factory data and providing real-time AI and machine learning-driven insights for better decision making. So I'm going to leave it over to the team, and starting over to you, Mr. Murthy.
Thank you, Doug, for that kind introduction. It's an honor for me to have the opportunity to set the context for such a distinguished panel of speakers. I'm very excited to hear what everyone has to say today. I'd like to start with a number, $10.5 trillion US. According to a leading cybersecurity publication, this is the expected annual cost of cybercrime to the global economy over the next few years, making it more profitable than the global trade of all major illegal drugs combined. If it were a country, it would be the world's third largest economy after the US and China. And with the rise of artificial intelligence, both as a tool for protecting ourselves against these attacks, as well as an enabler for these sophisticated attacks, the stakes for boardrooms have never been higher. So the question isn't whether your organization will face a cyber threat. I think that's more about how prepared you are to respond when it does happen. Now, I'd like to take a step back and put a bit of additional context around today's topic. And I would like to do this by using the example of a sector that I work very closely with, which is manufacturing. So we all broadly know that there have been 4 industrial revolutions that have so far taken place. It started in the 18th century, where there was a migration from agriculture to industrial activity, enabled largely thanks to the advent of the steam engine. In the 19th century, there was the next industrial revolution, which was characterized by the arrival of electricity, mass production, and culminating in Henry Ford's moving assembly line. In the 20th century, we've had the emergence of computers, electronics, automation of physical work, and now already in the early part of the 21st century, we are in what most people term as the era of Industry 4.0, fueled by, among other things, advancements in network connectivity, big data, and of course, AI. Now, my purpose here is not to give a history lesson, but to highlight two key trends that have always stood out to me. One, change is not optional. Any company that has been around for more than one industrial revolution has had to fundamentally transform and reinvent itself. And those that didn't, well, we don't hear about them anymore. The second point is that the rate of advancement is rapidly increasing. While the first and second transformation took around 100 years each, the transformation from the third to the fourth industrial revolution has taken less than 50 years, and people are already talking about the fifth. So what does this mean for us beyond all the buzzwords? If we as board members want to see our company survive and indeed thrive, not just over the next few years, but over the next few decades, we will be forced to ask some very fundamental questions and constantly rethink what it means to build a resilient organization. There's a very famous quote by Roy Amara, a renowned futurist, who said, "We tend to overestimate the effect of a technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run." This is especially true for AI. In the short term, the excitement often revolves around flashy demonstrations, speculative use cases, leading to a lot of inflated expectations. But the real profound impact of AI often unfolds quietly over years or decades, transforming industries, reshaping societies, and in the case of cybersecurity, altering the very nature of how we secure systems, data, and people. The challenge is to temper this short-term hype with long-term vision and ensure that we lay the right ethical, technical, and regulatory groundwork for the sweeping change that is about to come. And I think what makes dealing with AI in particular that much more challenging is its potential to surpass average human intelligence in ways which we cannot fully predict or comprehend. In fact, Yuval Harari in his book Homo Deus alluded to this, and it's a really interesting thought that by its very nature, a system that is smarter than us could act and make decisions in a way that defies our current understanding. So this isn't just a theoretical concern, it underscores the need for caution, ethical frameworks, proactive leaderships at the board level to ensure that these systems align with human values and priorities. As we stand on the brink of such transformative technology, the question isn't only how we build such systems, but how we prepare for a future where they may think and act beyond our grasps. Today's webinar is one small step towards this direction, and I, for one, am very excited to hear the thoughts and perspectives of our distinguished panel of experts on this topic and trying to understand the relevance of cybersecurity in the age of AI. Before we jump into that, we have a quick poll question for all of you that I think is going to be really useful in setting further context for our discussion today. I will ask the organizers if they can pull that up. And you should be able to get a QR code and scan it, and we will see some of these results in real time. I hope all of you are able to see the poll as well as the responses. It's also very fascinating to see that there is a clear leader in the biggest challenge that we feel that boardrooms face. I think it'll be up for another 10, 20 seconds. So those of you who haven't given in your response, please do so. So almost 50% so far. are saying lack of expertise at the board level. I think it further underscores the importance and relevance of webinars with the topic that we have today. We will be closing the polls now. I don't think those numbers are going to change much. So lack of expertise at the board level it is. And this is where today's expert panel of speakers will shed some light, help us take a step in that direction, and ensure that we can do something meaningful by the end of today's session towards addressing that pain point. So with that, I think we are done with the poll. The results are showing, and let's dive in to the first speaker of the day, Mr. Chris Burt, principal at Halex Consulting, who I believe will delve into cybersecurity trends and the role of AI towards tackling these trends. So over to you, Chris. Looking forward to your session.
Thank you. We could take the poll off the screen, but anyway. Hopefully that'll go right. Okay, so hopefully you can see the slides. I've only got a few slides. I thought I'd put some slides together. I thought I'd put a cover slide on, and I actually asked ChatGPT to produce an image for me. So I put the topic of the discussion in cybersecurity in the age of AI, threats, trends, and trusts, and it came up with the one on the left-hand side, which is all doom and gloom and a bit scary. And I think that's part of the problem, is that we all see cyber and AI as all a bit doomy and gloomy and scary. So I then asked it to actually to reproduce the image and actually be a bit more positive, and kind of this AI could be a positive thing, and it produced the image on the right there. So I think that's kind of where we are as a world at the moment. We're all a bit, this AI thing is very new. We're all a bit nervous about it, but actually it could be really, really positive. Subject to managing it well. So what I thought I'd do is, because we all kind of jump into these discussions on AI, but no one takes the time to actually define what we're talking about. So unfortunately, there isn't a generally accepted definition of AI. So the UK government has proposed these two characteristics to define AI. One is adaptivity, and you hinted at it just now. Adaptivity makes it difficult to explain the logic or intent of the system's outcomes. What that means in English, in old-fashioned IT systems, for a known input, you get a known output. You'd be able to say, if I put this in, I'll get that out. And, mechanically, that's what happens. Every single time it happens that way. With AI, I can put an input in and get an output. Fine. I put the same input in, I would possibly get a different output. And I can't necessarily explain the difference. Also, autonomy. AI systems are autonomous in some way. So it's difficult to, in the way that it's described here, to assign responsibility for outcomes. So the AI system might come to a decision or a conclusion that I cannot explain, which is exactly the point that you were just trying to make. So the combination of adaptivity and autonomy means that AI is very different to the technology that's gone before us. And it also means that it's quite difficult if you're sat on a board and you have systems upon which you're reliant and they're adaptive and autonomous, that could be quite scary. How do you control an organization? How do you steer an organization when you can't explain why systems are coming to the conclusions that they're coming to? So just thought we'd put that there. And then another, just to reinforce some of the things that you were just saying, we are at the dawn of a new age. So we had PCs, silicon chips and PCs on desks in the 1970s into the 1980s. We had the big data revolution into the 1990s, into the 2000s. All of those were actually building blocks for AI. All of those things have enabled AI. So the real revolution is AI, and it will be utterly transformational, but it will happen in fits and starts. So we'll have something like ChatGPT will emerge and everyone will go, wow. And then nothing much will happen for a while. And then something else will happen. And so what we're seeing is amongst boards, spend quite a bit of time talking to boards, is there's a real fear of missing out, real fear that we need to do something. Our shareholders, our stakeholders expect us to be doing something around AI. And if we don't do something around AI, our competitors we're going to miss out. But they just don't know quite what that thing is. So boards are in a difficult position. There's a Stephen Hawking quote there, which is quite interesting. You know, AI could be one of the biggest events in human history, but it could be the last if we don't manage it well. So I'm just trying to balance the discussion between scary AI, oh my gosh, it's going to transform everything in a bad way, to we need to balance this with what the things it can do really, really well. So accelerating the discovery of new medicines. One of the things that UK government is doing at the moment is using AI to go back over old medicines, to look at them and to figure out, well, actually, can we repurpose some of these old medicines that have been developed many years ago? Can we reuse them? And it's finding that actually a whole bunch of medicines previously discovered and used actually have new uses. But we do have some challenges. Human rights, deepfake technology, we're seeing that a lot. So phishing is a social engineering attack, if people aren't aware, where someone will send you a link in an email and you click on the link and it takes you to what looks like a website, but actually they're trying to scam your details from you. That's a very traditional kind of phishing. But what we're now seeing is someone will phone you up and it's a voice you recognize, and they'll ask you questions and it will be interactive, and you'll think you're talking to someone that you know, and they'll carefully take information from you. And we're also seeing video phishing as well. So I saw some amazing stuff recently where you actually had a very famous person apparently sending a personalized video to the recipient asking for help with something or other. Incredible, very powerful. You have to restrain yourself from wanting to help this very famous person with this very noble cause. So just getting into, I have to move all your beautiful faces around my screen, sorry, so I can read what's on screen. So it's a double-edged sword. Angel, devil, we haven't quite figured out. It's probably a bit of both, to be perfectly honest with you. So what does this mean in the world of cyber risk and cyber attacks and all this kind of stuff? Well, AI is being used to do things that have been around for a while, but make them so much more effective. So we've just talked about phishing. Phishing used to be these kind of fairly badly written emails with a link in, and people could spot them quite easily. And now we're getting these really sophisticated attacks coming out. But it also, we're seeing the creation of bots and influence over elections. So recently, the Romanian in Europe, the Romanian presidential election, the first round, the courts have struck it down and said you've got to rerun it because we're worried about influence and negative influence on the results of that election. If you've been on X, or Twitter as it used to be called, you'll see so much content coming from bots. It's just phenomenal. And it's sometimes difficult to spot the real stuff from the bot stuff. And it's all about manipulating people to do things that perhaps are not in everyone's best interests. So yes, there are new attacks happening. There are new threats. Data manipulation is a problem. So AI systems are vulnerable to data poisoning and polluted data sets. So in case people aren't aware, the way that AI works is it uses huge pools of data to come up with an answer, and then often what the AI tool will do will feed that answer back into the data pool. The trouble with AI currently is that it produces a solid B- answer, not an A* or an A+ answer, and so the quality of the output going back into the data pool slightly corrupts the data pool over time. Taking that concept, you can use AI to dirty that pool even further. And then we have things like critical infrastructure. So as AI becomes used in more and more places, it's being used in more and more sensitive places. And as we saw from the definition at the start, we don't fully understand how AI works. It comes out with answers we don't fully understand the logic behind. And therefore, how do you secure a system that may not act in ways that you fully anticipate? And so incorporating some of these AI systems into critical infrastructure may actually be exposing them to new kinds of attacks. And we do have AI cyber attacking tools out there, and they're only going to get better. So we will be seeing AI producing AI tools. And the thing about cyber criminals is that they don't need to get things right first time. If you're running an organization, you only want to implement an AI system that you understand and know works well. Whereas if you're a cyber criminal, try it, doesn't work, let it fail, try again, keep tweaking. You need to be lucky one time. And so they can be much more agile than businesses can typically. So that's why it's a real problem, real challenge. But this is creating change in the way in the world of cybersecurity. So we're now using AI on the defensive as well to look for these threats and do anomaly analysis and predictive analytics and those types of things. We're seeing regulatory changes. So the EU's AI Act, which is a very safety first kind of approach, may or may not be a clever idea, but that's out there. There's other stuff coming out. It's accelerated the use of zero trust architecture. I've given you a definition, but essentially a zero trust architecture. The way we used to work in cybersecurity was let's build really high, really thick walls around the organization and nothing can get through. Keep all the bad guys on the outside. We've got these really thick, really high walls and we're all secure inside. Inside we're fine. Kind of the armadillo thing, hard on the outside, soft and squishy in the middle. Except that we figured out that people can get through the walls. And then what do you do? So that approach is being replaced with this zero trust approach, which is every single element within the framework, within the environment needs to be, is not trusted and you need to verify every single time. Completely different mindset. So it doesn't assume no attack is successful. It assumes there will be a successful attack and therefore the approach is this. Cybersecurity skills gap. So it's not just at the board level there's a problem. It's just generally there is a problem in terms of AI focused cybersecurity skills. And last point, last slide. I wanted, as this is an IOD thing, and I work with boards on a regular basis. I talk to boards about AI. I've already kind of touched on FOMO earlier. What I wanted to do is to leave you with something practical to take away from this. So, as I mentioned, boards are in a real difficult position at the moment. There's a real fear of missing out. They need to be seen to be doing something. They want to do something. They see that AI could be transformational, and it will be transformational. Therefore, they do need to do something about it. But what is that thing? So what I talk to boards about is to take a structured approach to this. So organize one or more blue sky board discussions. Don't have a detailed agenda, 10 minutes on that, 50 minutes on that, paper, make decisions. That's how a board normally works. We don't want that. We want to give them time and space to discuss the topic without a set agenda and without decisions needing to be made. So this could be a series of blue sky discussions, but what is the board's position in principle on AI and emerging tech? What stuff do we want to do? What stuff do we really not want to do? And for the stuff in the middle, the gray stuff, let's discuss that in a bit more detail. On the back of those board discussions, management, the executive team, should be able to go away and develop or propose an AI strategy and an associated risk appetite for AI and emerging tech, which they can get the board to engage with and to say, yeah, actually, that's what we want. That's the strategy we want. That's the risk appetite that we're willing to live with. You then ask management to implement that. So, you obviously need, from a board perspective, you need to have some oversight. So you need to allocate responsibility for oversight of AI and emerging tech to a nominated board committee. I would suggest a board risk committee, but I've also seen technology oversight committees reporting to the board. So make someone responsible for this at board level, reporting to the board. And And then we get into the nuts and bolts of well, how do you do this stuff? Well, let's start with, I'm sure people have seen Copilot appear on their laptops randomly. Who approved that? Who signed that off? Where's that data going? What's it being used for? AI is appearing everywhere. A lot of organizations have no idea about what AI they have currently, how it's being used, where that data is going. They've got no idea. So 20 odd years ago, US introduced Sarbanes-Oxley, and being very, very old, one of the problems that we had to deal with was spreadsheets being used in financial reporting. So we told organizations produce an inventory of all of the spreadsheets used in financial reporting, put controls around those spreadsheets, log them, monitor them, know who owns them, know how they're used. I'm afraid we have to go back to that approach. We have to look at an organization. We have to figure out what AI we have in this organization, how it's being used, who owns it, where the data goes, blah, blah, blah. Do that analysis, get a grip on AI now. And then you can, or in parallel, you can then also start exploring how you can use AI in a more controlled way within the organization. So set up a center of excellence or a skunk works or an incubator based around the risk appetite and the risk strategy that the board has come up with. This is the stuff that we want to explore. Do it in a controlled way. Fail fast, move on. Think about establishing AI evangelists and all those types of things. So those are just very quick things I wanted to run through to give organizations some ideas about what they could be doing. And I'll stop at that point.
Great, thank you, Chris. Those are some really great tips and insights into how one can balance the risks with the immense opportunity that AI has to offer. With that, we'll welcome our next panel speaker, Ms. Christina Jarek, who is the founder of Booster of Innovation. And in today's talk, she will be exploring GenAI's impact on productivity and value creation. So over to you, Christina.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. So I will take you from the cybersecurity world to the maybe not innovation, but innovation is the era when we are using generative AI very frequently. But I will present you some conclusions from the reports we produced in Innovation Briefing Report, how generative AI influenced the productivity and how the workplace is changing. And the first question is about your organization. How many generative AI tools have you introduced? How many, how long you are using or your employees are using AI doing their work? And I'm taking you to the journey to the companies that are using generative AI frequently. It means that employees are using it 3 to 4 hours daily for delivering their tasks. And I would like to ask for a presentation and from my slides, so I just go through them and I share some inspiring insights, what will happen when we are using generative AI on a frequent basis. So this is some examples from different companies we are using. So of course, cybersecurity is really important. So before introducing AI tools and introducing a new role of working, it's important to take care about the security. But on the other hand, it's really important to know what will happen when employees start working. So the first phase was, in general, generative AI tools are designed for human plus AI work environment. But when we introduce many generative AI tools, we are in the environment of team and AI. So this is something that we have to take care how the team are managing. I don't know if I will get my slides, so I will just try to show you, explain. And the first challenge is we are facing new scenarios of work, and experiments made by Harvard Business School and Boston Consulting Group shows that humans are differently adopting and using AI. And there are two different working styles occurring. First is people are using it, very flexible. There is no difference between the human work and the AI. So this is something that people are using simultaneously AI. So this is one type of employees. And the other type of employees are using it, dividing the work with human and the AI. Next slide, please. Because I was just starting the introduction. This is the slide about, this is the report was presenting in the Saudi Arabia. And what is the 4 areas that influence the work of AI and how employees are behaving differently? As first is the scenario. Second is the new experience of employees. This is completely new, different word with AI. Thirdly is the creative symbiosis with AI. So this is something how AI is influencing the creativity. And finally, what will happen? What is the next after generative AI? So this is the really exciting thing, but this is like futurologist era. I will share some insights from this report because whole report has 16 actionable trends. I will show you the most influential on the leadership side. So on the next slide, I have explanation of what I have started talking about is the cyborg and centaur. So this is the 2 styles of employees using AI. And what is really interesting is that the level of efficiency and productivity is really the same. So we have to take care that employees will use AI on their way, how they, consume AI. And this means us as leaders is not, saying them how they should choose or how to do their work. What is important in the research and during this experiment, it was shown that 30% there is a greater productivity, but the difference is about the training, how we prepare employees for using AI. And knowing what is AI, how it works, what kind of results we can gain, and how we should collaborate with the machine. So this is something that we should start to remember that this is machine. So this is really important for the training. And many companies I'm talking about, they think that it's, ChatGPT is easy and there's no need for good training. And this is great failure. Employees need to be understood what will happen and know how to collaborate effectively with AI. Second area is our new experience with employees, and this is really surprising how it changes. And first of all, it's obvious that we need to train AI models, especially for those who are working with AI. But when we look at the organization level, there is a problem that people are saying, okay, I do not want to make an onboarding for AI. So I do not want to be the buddy because I'm learning of what I'm doing. I'm learning the AI and what will happen with me. So this makes employees be resistant to the knowledge transfer. So this is something that you have to think about how to manage it. Another, challenge for the new experience of employees is the negative impact of AI, and especially on the employees' attitudes and delivering tasks. There was also research by German scientists from Berlin University. They divided the group of employees, and one group was said that AI is delivering the control of the product, and the second group was doing the same job as previously, so they had the responsibility for the control of the quality. And the first groups didn't take care about the quality at all. So this was like, if AI is doing the job, I will not take the responsibility for it. So it's we are talking about critical thinking and looking what is doing the AI, but also preparing for changes and how employees are doing. And thirdly, what is not many people are talking about is about the power consumption, the electricity consumption by generative AI. And also we are just investigating that people using AI are not generative AI, are not thinking about should I do this task with AI or should I use different technologies? So this is like, if there is a hype for AI, people are trying to use this, or they are not thinking, is this technology good for the planet or not? So this is like, because we can just get the same results at the same time, but with the lower use of energy. And the third area I would like to share the inspiration with you is about creativity. And it's really, for me, it's really, how to say it, I'm really enthusiastic about this area because as the more I'm working with AI, the more innovation we are doing with AI, we are discovering that AI is boosting human creativity, human intellect. And here is the chart, and it represents the results of the Go game at Masters. And during the 60 years from 1950, the average amount of the Masters level of the creativity or the level of the game is pretty much the same. But everything changed in 2016 is the moment that AlphaGo wins with the champion. And this was the moment that AI was better than Go master. But it shows that players starting to thinking how AI is delivering the solutions, how they are calculating or preparing the solutions, and the collaboration or looking for AI work influence the creativity of human beings. So this is really exciting, and this is not, simply introducing AI to the work environment, but thinking about how AI can boost our creativity of, what we are doing, what our company is doing. And I'm preparing strategies for big companies, how to introduce AI to the company. And this is something how to disrupt not only the company, but how the industry is disrupting, who can introduce the market. And I was working for Deloitte, and one of strategy I was preparing, it was like how to disrupt consulting industry with AI. And we discovered that there is, great possibility of a small company entering the consulting era with AI, and this is possible. But on the other hand, there was a huge opportunity for global consulting companies to enter a micro, small, and medium companies market, not available previously. So this is like, working with AI, showing, different spectrum. And the last insight I would like to share with you here is that not think about AI like automation or eliminating routine job, but look at how AI can assist you or augment your work. So this is like very short. In 10 minutes, I would like to get inspiring you if you are embedding AI into your company and introducing to the workplace, and then there are some drawbacks, and be ready as a leader for how influence your employees, your talent, and be prepared for that, but also how to boost creativity with AI. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christina. Those were some really thought-provoking insights on the impact of AI on the workforce and what it means for the future of work. Our next speaker today is Mr. Nimit Javeri, who is a managing partner at BitScore Cybertech, and he will be addressing strategies for building resilient enterprises through AI and cybersecurity. Over to you, Nimit.
Thank you. Let me just share my slide deck and we can get started. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it's visible, Nimit.
Perfect, thank you. So not a day goes by when we think of serious cybersecurity events that are happening across the world. A lot happens in that space. We see events in terms of a company getting impacted, and as a result of that, at times the entire supply chain gets impacted of that. I think very recently we saw in India as well a security provider, a service provider getting impacted, and as a result of that, the large companies which are dependent upon them, getting impacted as well. The attacks are getting fairly sophisticated as well. So yeah, the bad guys have started to use AI, I would say, much earlier than the good guys. And we're seeing the AI-powered attacks as well. I mean, specifically in terms of the FedEx calls that the attacks that we get and everything. Even a common person is kind of seeing the power of AI when it comes to cyber attacks. So we are living in an age wherein AI is effectively leveraged in terms of threats as well. Now, what does it mean in terms of cybersecurity? As we've seen, the bad guys have already started leveraging AI for cyber threats. The good guys have also kind of gone into the game, and we are seeing large scale implementation of artificial intelligence nowadays in terms of cyber defense as well. A lot of the large companies are effectively leveraging AI for cyber defense, and thereby kind of increasing the actual rate at which threats are being detected and responded across the organization. Given the twin challenges of security, specifically the cybersecurity skills, as well as the increasing volumes of data, AI is obviously becoming very, very relevant in terms of being able to mitigate and enhance the cybersecurity posture of an organization. Multiple technologies are available, multiple approaches are available, and it takes some thought as well, because it's a fast-moving field as well, to look at what can be done and how things can be leveraged from that perspective. Automated responses is something which everybody wants, but always are difficult to get. It's an ever-changing game as well. So it's very required for an organization to kind of think ahead as well as to which technology, which platform to go for, and how you can effectively leverage that as well. Organizations having implemented AI as part of cyber defenses are reaping the rewards as well. Typically, we are seeing incidents of a very quick detection, response, and recovery when AI is leveraged in terms of cyber defense. Uh, uh, the exposure in terms of overall revenue loss, business disruption as well is kind of seen much improved in organizations where AI has been implemented very effectively. Although we are seeing varied differences across the organizations, small and medium companies obviously finding it difficult. Large organizations, especially global organizations, are seeing AI being implemented across the globe in a very widespread manner, very easily, and their cost savings are obviously significantly higher. But yes, across the board, I think the benefits are being seen when AI is implemented in cybersecurity. As a matter of fact, many studies have shown that one of the biggest areas where AI has been implemented very effectively is in the area of cybersecurity. With the adoption of AI in cybersecurity, one of the challenges, that always, is there in the AI field as well, is the data quality and bias. AI algorithms are known to have biases built in. It's difficult to, kind of, get over the problem very, very, easily. It's something which takes time. It's something which takes expertise. And cybersecurity as an area has always seen a scarcity in terms of challenges. Now with AI coming in, getting in a person or getting in a set of people who can speak AI and cybersecurity has also become very difficult. And one of the biggest challenges I would say in terms of adoption as well has not been the cost of AI, but the human cost in terms of the skill set that is required to bring to the table. One big challenge that is obviously seen across the organization, especially being discussed a lot in the boardrooms, is the developments that we are seeing in cybersecurity regulations as well as artificial intelligence across the globe. Countries have taken different directions at times, maybe divergent at times as well. Certain countries are adopting it very effectively. Certain companies are throwing barriers against this, and this again becomes something very, very difficult for boards, especially at global companies, to kind of take a directional call as to which to go for, what to go for, and will that fall in line across the world. I would say the two biggest challenges that I'm seeing personally, at that level, are obviously the skill sets and the regulations that are there from AI and cybersecurity perspective globally. With that, having said that, the roadmap is pretty clear. I think it's no longer a decision for boards or the companies to look at AI, from a cybersecurity perspective, but it's definitely something which is part and parcel now. It's just a question of to what extent or to what level AI is being introduced from a cyber defense posture. One of the effective strategies that I've seen in many companies where this is being implemented very effectively is a continuous cyber performance management program. So the companies are evaluating at a board level not just how effectively their company is from a cybersecurity controls perspective, but I think very importantly what the third parties are doing as well. Companies which the company is reliant upon for the business activities. one of the important aspects of making sure that the company is resilient from that perspective is ensuring adequate training and awareness, not just at a board level, not just at a particular role level, but across the organization. And this, I think, is one of the most effective ways, one of the most effective strategies which a company should use from cyber resilience perspective, right? I mean, the entire incident response program. To say that, I mean, to summarize, I think AI is definitely the key to cybersecurity resilience. It makes sure that a company can effectively manage its risk, the cyber risk that I'm emanating from various threat actors across the world. And obviously, one of the key things that organizations need to do is address the changes, specifically ethical considerations when it comes to adopting the AI. That's one of the keys, and that's one of the areas where I think the board should also look at more effectively in terms of what needs to be done. With that, I'll just hand it back to the speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Nimit. Using AI to tackle AI, fantastic, something for us to really think about. With that, I'll call on our last panelist for the day, Ms. Shashi Prabha Dharmadasa, who is a director at BoardPack and who will be talking to us today about cyber risk, compliance, and regulatory standards with a focus on financial institutions. So over to you, Shashi Prabha.
Thank you, Srihari. Let me share my slides. Cybersecurity governance in financial institutions. That's the topic that I will speak on today. In the past 2 decades, globally, there have been 2,000 cyber attacks, leading to $20 billion loss, as reported by the Financial Stability Report, the latest one coming out from Reserve Bank of India. So it's a $20 billion loss in the last 2 decades. So cybersecurity is not a nice to have, not an option, and something that we do if there is budget anymore. So it's not an option anymore. Banks belong to the critical infrastructure of any country. Attacking the banks can be an act of terrorism to handicap the country's government and crippling the whole running of the country. So taking that into consideration, trends that are seen globally are that banks have increased their cyber insurance cover by 8% in this financial year, year-on-year increase. And we see a trend that is increasing year-on-year. And also IMF recommends that board members are held responsible for cyber vulnerabilities. Because as a financial institution, cybersecurity is a technological necessity as well as a trust enabler. People tend to trust their money in a bank that they feel are secure. So any cyber incident that will lead to any reputational damage can actually damage the sustainability of business for a financial institution as well. So assessing cyber risks and global compliance regulations are factors the financial services sector should consider to help combat evolving cyber threats. So with this in light, RBI has instructed financial institutions to monitor their critical systems, SWIFT, RTGS, the card network, UPI, NEFT. So the key cybersecurity considerations taking the cybersecurity governance comes into focus as financial institutions face the future of banking. So the future of banking definitely brings in generative AI into focus. Then there is a growing demand for seamless and personalized experience across borders. Gone are the days we went to another country, took another card and went. We want to do the same kind of payments and the same seamless transactions that we have been used to across multiple borders, whether you're a retail client or a corporate client. And there is exponential growth of data. How the data is handled also comes into the forefront when it comes to cybersecurity governance, and the increasing adoption of cloud-based systems. So with these future factors in sight, the key cybersecurity considerations are the global cyber boundaries and changing regulatory environments. We need to know how to navigate the diverse regulatory landscapes, where there is how much transparency, how much reporting across diverse regulatory landscapes, especially when you're a multinational banking institute. Adapting to national interests and information sovereignty. More and more we hear financial institutions, governments wanting information sovereignty. So where the data resides becomes a factor, especially when you operate across multiple geographies. Supply chain security compliance. Again, your cyber posture, your cyber resilience is as vulnerable or as strong as your links across the supply chain. So your supply chain security compliance also is a consideration under global cyber boundaries. Incident reporting in a global context especially comes again into focus when you are operating across multiple geographies. And the regulatory compliance, where in each geography, each jurisdiction, how the regulatory compliance works. Number two, cybersecurity consideration that we need to consider is this to supercharge cybersecurity with automation, AI being one factor. The resource limitation and data overload is a consideration that we need to consider, which is a challenge in dealing with the automation. The volume of vulnerabilities, especially given the fact that there is a dearth of cybersecurity professionals who are actually trained in AI-related vulnerabilities as well. The volume of vulnerabilities actually can lead to delays in incident mitigation. So then the third one is asset inventory maintenance. Many financial institutions have archaic or incomplete asset inventories. So how this is maintained comes again as a focus area that needs to be considered in cybersecurity, supercharging cybersecurity. Then the timely incident mitigation again has some relationship to the volume of vulnerabilities that are actually hitting, especially with the futuristic technologies that have come into place, and also the fact that there is not too many trained. We haven't had too much of a training period actually to overcome this. And the third point is the make digital identity individual, not institutional. The customer identity and access management strategies will come into focus in that. Fraud detection and prevention. There have been a lot of frauds, especially with the recently in financial institutions. So how this is detected, how it's prevented, how preemptive measures can be taken will always be, they always say cybersecurity is playing a catch-up game. So the bad guys come in first, and cybersecurity posture is always playing a catch-up game. So in fraud detection and prevention, then the regulatory compliance and identity management that comes into the forefront again. The entitlement, sprawl, and management, where you actually do banking, a customer tends to do banking over multiple platforms now. Not just maybe ATM or document-based counter transactions, but there is you pay by card, you pay by UPI, mobile, so different platforms. So the entitlement sprawl with identity management and password protection comes into place then. Identity-focused attack surface management and the rise of deep fakes, especially with the proliferation of AI. We can see a lot of an increasing trend in the rise of deep fakes and bad actors. So top priorities for financial institutions and boards handling financial institutions to develop, implement a sophisticated framework for regulatory compliance that can adapt to different laws across jurisdictions. And which laws you abide by and how the reporting works. Implement automation for effective vulnerability management. This will bring in the AI focus into the forefront because especially playing a catch-up game when it comes to the amount of information and the how AI is developing is impossible otherwise. So automation is required. Align investments with local infrastructure and cloud technologies that meet data sovereignty requirements. Again, more and more you can see the major platform providers also providing cloud abiding by the data sovereignty requirements that are becoming more and more stringent as time goes by. Strengthen the CIAM strategies to elevate security and customer experience. Establish rigorous vetting and monitoring processes for supply chain security. Again, as we discussed, the security posture of the supply chain has to be as stringent as the security posture that the financial institution wishes to be. Incorporate identity analytics for advanced fraud detection. And standardized authentication practices across the industry. Leverage AI and blockchain to automate tedious compliance tasks. Standardized authentication practices across the industry because each bank having to operate with a security posture of their own may not lead to, we need to start exploiting the synergies that the whole industry as a whole offers when it comes to standardizing the authentication practices. The India context with regards to AI and cybersecurity, there is a draft Digital India Act 2023, which is the proposed legislation in India and will replace the Information Technology Act of 2000, which will actually address cybercrime, data protection, online safety, and intermediary regulation. So bringing it more, bringing the regulation more up to date with the changing technology. And the National Data Governance Framework Policy, which the Ministry of Electronics and IT has come out with, which is meant to foster an ecosystem for AI and data-driven research and startups in India. Thank you.
Thanks, Shashi. That was really interesting. Ultimately, it all seems to come down to money. And thank you for sharing your thoughts on that topic. So I think, there were a lot of key takeaways from today's session. And while there may be terms and phrases, and we may classify some of these as buzzwords that we may not fully comprehend today, I think if we can take some of these back and use them as points and a direction for educating ourselves and understanding, what they actually mean, so that we can incorporate them into our boardroom discussions, that will be a very, very important first step. It does pose a lot of interesting questions. Will we one day have an AI board member? What's the impact on the workforce? I read an interesting statistic that 70% of jobs by 2030 would require advanced digital skills. Are we ready for that transition? Impact on mental health. What does it mean for people working with AI colleagues? A lot of questions, a lot of opportunities, and I'm sure even the audience today would have a lot of thoughts and questions for the panelists. So I think we are ready to go to the next session. Do note down your questions. We will have one more speaker before we start the Q&A. For that, I will hand it back to Doug to introduce the next session, and then we'll see you at the Q&A.
All right, thank you so much. And what a great session that was. And thank you for facilitating so well as well. So we're moving on to before we go into Q&A, which I can see there's a couple of hands that have come up. So just please bear with us that we will get to you in good time. But we have the honor of having Ms. Rennie Wynn, who's going to be doing a special keynote address on the theme of integrating AI and cybersecurity in boardrooms, a strategic blueprint for global directors. And it's an absolute pleasure to introduce a NASA Chief Information Officer. I actually was doing a speech myself and got introduced by a NASA guy who was he was one of the engineers on the Mars project in terms of building the Mars cars or whatever they call them. So it's lovely to introduce someone in recipient. So Ms. Wynne has over 30 years of governance and leadership experience across technology, cybersecurity, AI, and risk management. And her career highlights a notable tenures, obviously at NASA, but also before that at the Environmental Protection Agency as well. So without further ado, Ms. Wynne, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Doug, for the introduction. I sometimes don't recognize who you introduce, other than maybe a few more gray hairs. So good day, everybody, and it's great to be here. And boy, my colleagues on this great set of presentations has really covered a lot. So I'm gonna take us to space. And then we can probably get to some questions, because the reason I want to take you to space is we actually haven't talked about it as the cyber risks that it poses to any operation in any business. So cybersecurity, as well as the AI from a board perspective, is your preparedness and your response, and that equals business resilience. Underneath that is really getting to understand those risks where you operate in your business. And so without further ado, let's go to space. So cybersecurity happens in space on an everyday basis, cybersecurity problems, and that there's also some kinetic issues associated with space debris, which is growing by leaps and bounds algorithmically, actually, not in a linear way. And there are more satellites by commercial entities in space now than in nations, and that is changing the framework by which both the United States and other countries have to look at peaceful operations in space, because the commercial entities pose some risks, and sometimes they actually don't understand the risks that they pose. There are no boundaries in space geographically, although there is low Earth orbit, synchronistic orbit, geo orbit, et cetera, those are just boundaries that we use in order to travel to space and create the appropriate instruments or space assets to go exploring. So in my experience, cybersecurity incidents happen on really only the last day of the work week. And in the United States, that's Friday. And they really like to happen just before a holiday weekend, so that now more recently in the area, you are always in constant contact, but the best way to escape it was to get on an airplane and let your team deal with it. But that's not true anymore to do that. And I bring this up because this is what happened at NASA. I'm going to go backwards for just a second here. And why should you care about space dependencies? Because your weather depends upon space assets, and building the models is down here on terra firma, but a lot of the data comes from space and Earth, or from space and Earth observations, and pulling all that data together to improve the models and give you better predictions, which has been very interesting for me, because we've had a lot of rain right now, and it's very windy now, and my internet has gone out twice during this presentation. So I'm now running this on my phone, just in case I go out. So if I disappear, I'll come back as fast as I possibly can, because I am prepared, because I came from NASA. Belts, suspenders, and duct tape. That's how you do everything. So we don't leave much to risk and luck, although from IT, we definitely used hope as our strategy when we would push out some big effort. So besides weather, climate and is another thing, because if you are siting new businesses, new locations, let's say a manufacturing plant, you need to be looking at the more recent models running on floodplains and what they call the 100-year weather events before you say, I'm going to spend millions. Or if you're building an electric company, because as one of my colleagues shared, AI is driving huge power problems in the United States. And that also includes electric vehicles and things like that. So it's not just the AI part, but we're seeing, and I think it's across the globe, a real uptick in power demand, and building a new power plant is very expensive. Bringing the old ones that have been mothballed back online still cost lots of money. So paying attention to climate and how that's changing in your area becomes very important to business opportunities. There's navigations associated with logistics, such as shipping, trains, and airplanes. I've been on an airplane, I've been on many airplanes owned by NASA. And yes, those guys brought their iPads onto the airplane. And I was just sitting there going, now, I know how to hack that. I hope they've got that protected, but I did have to just trust the pilots to do their job. Of course, there's telecommunications. Touches that on a regular basis. If you watch sports, you are watching by satellite on a regular basis. And that, and talked about a climate event, you're going to be getting your transmissions through satellites if there's been a significant climate event, because a lot of times some of the terra firma telecommunications get knocked out. And so, beam up to space and then bring it back down to use the terra firma critical infrastructure. And we've mentioned that banking, but the grid, electric grid is another one as well. So now on to space stories, because that's what most people really want to hear about, including astronaut stories, but we don't have time for that one. So it was one fun Friday evening. It was about 4 o'clock, and it'd been a big week. I think we'd actually rolled out a new product and all of that, and we were kind of recovering from the repercussions of something like that. It always goes really well, but there's always something that doesn't go so well. And my chief information security officer, who gets in at 4 a.m., so I should not see him at 4 p.m. And so he peeks his head and he's like, "Ma'am, do you have a moment?" Right behind him is his deputy, and he is like, "Hi." And they come in and they close the door immediately. Now, my office, yes, it's a corner office, but it's not what you think it is, because I worked for the United States federal government, but it was a corner office. So no one comes down that part of the hallway unless they want to see you. So it's very private, and especially at 4 o'clock on Friday, everyone's gone home. This is when we worked in the office a lot more than we do now. And they said, "We've got a problem." And I was like, when your security people say we've got a problem, it's big. Well, it is big. At that point, they briefed me about, we had a conversation about an hour long. And what it was is the Deep Space Network. And it is precisely what the words tell you. The Deep Space Network connects to the flying assets that either NASA has launched as its own, in partnership with other countries. So we are looking at potentially international incidents at this point, or in partnership with other federal agencies, such as some of the weather satellites are not launched out of NASA, but those are satellites by another agency. And said that we found an intruder. And it's not what you want to hear on a Friday. So I said, "Well, what's the preliminary read on this?" And this is what we call first story, because the first story is actually never the same as the second, third, and fourth story. So as a board member, if you are getting briefed on an incident, you should ask the question of, is this first story, second story, or third story? Because the information gets more and more clear as time goes on and you've had time to investigate. And what we found, and this was first story, is they thought that it was an Internet of Things. And we haven't mentioned yet, IT has 3 categories, and people will argue this all the time, but it's information technology, your mobile phones, your laptops, and things like that, your operational technology. NASA has massive amounts of operational technology, from cryogenics to heating and cooling systems. And these are extreme heating and cooling systems, not just that which keeps human comfortable, but helps test and prepare articles for space, at which point you get to very, very cold situations and very, very hot situations. And this is very specialized equipment. So that's your operational technology. And then there's your IoT, the mobile launch unit at NASA. If you've ever watched a launch, this literally is this. It's on this big giant car. It's a mobile thing that goes along at no more than 2.5 miles an hour, that carries a rocket launcher. So it is hugely tall and very, very fragile, goes very slow. That itself, just that piece of equipment, has 400,000 sensors on it. So that's a bunch of Internet of Things, because those are coming in the door now, smarter, which helps us better prepare for better launches, greater efficiencies, greater safety, maybe even a greater sense of security, because every launch, even though SpaceX and NASA make it look easy, it isn't easy. Every time you hit the button, so to speak, you do worry about something happening and do that. So I was just giving you a sense of the extent of technology that exists at NASA, millions and millions of pieces that we have to classify and keep safe. But anyway, back to the deep space network. So what it was an Internet of Things that had been put on the wrong network. And at this point, NASA at least had a couple of networks. We were actually globally very flat. And that's a problem because it makes it easy to just move around. Except in big cities, it's easy to move around in the United States in your car. So you're just driving all over the place to do whatever it is that you want to do with this. And I just looked and I said, please tell me it wasn't a sign telling people what the lunch menu was in the cafeteria. Just tell me this sign was something really cool. And they said, actually, it is really cool because what it does is it tracks overhead, what satellites are overhead, including the International Space Station, when you are standing in front of that sign. I said, okay, at least it did something cool, besides to tell you the burgers were going to be the special today. And when we dug deeper into this, into the deep space network, including connections up to space with our partners across the globe, and that we found that it was connected up to some of the International Space Station, not systems, but into their ground station systems. We had to cut those off because the International Space Station, when I mention an international incident, it's one thing to damage another country's satellite, and that's not a trivial thing. But the fact that for over 20 years, the United States, in partnership with many other countries, have had astronauts in space living together, at which point, and cutting off any communications in NASA is a very risky business because there's all these little built-in intricacies to make sure everything goes really well, because they just invent technology and they say, oh, if a human can do it, I bet I can get a machine to do it. And they figure that out. And then they just get the human, really smart humans, I would say, to make sure that they monitor it and check out the anomalies. And that made folks very nervous, but we also didn't have a good sense of what was happening. So we had to do this. And the good news is it was only a temporary item. And so in the end, what we found out, because this is a public forum, in the end, what we found out was it was user credentials. So the thing that login, username, and password had been compromised in another country, and individuals had gone in and just basically started to move around. And it wasn't the signs problem. We found out it was the credentials had been compromised. The sign was actually the reason we discovered it, because the Deep Space Network lesson was not monitored. So we didn't know that there was anything in it until the intruders were moving data into the signpost. Yes, they were really doing that. We could see it because signposts nowadays have storage on them. They didn't used to. And so they were just dumping storage in there with the intent of doing what I call a drive-by, picking it up and stealing the data. So we had to treat this pretty seriously, obviously, because of the space satellites and the International Space Station. But we were hindered because we didn't have monitoring. We didn't have log data. Going back later than 7 months, although the requirement is somewhere between 2 and 5 years, is you have to keep log data. And I know that's an expense, but I can tell you when you're investigating long-term invasions into your networks, intruders, as I call them, you need as much data as possible to do that. So over the next 18 months, we investigated over 1,800 servers twice. And we came away with a list of recommendations to go do. And these were pretty significant recommendations with pretty big budget bills. But I can tell you, and all of those things were implemented, including hiring, finally, a cyber expert in this particular domain area of NASA. How does this even happen to a large agency? One is we began building technology. And in fact, I can honestly say NASA did help invent the internet, and it is in fact a root provider. So we did that work as well. And every time they needed something for space or for science, for the benefit of humanity. They just invented it. And this was long before you could get software and stuff like that. They built their own servers. And when I got there, the White House had kind of had it, the United States White House had kind of had it with NASA's lack of posture. So we were on a journey to make a fix. But when you're a global operation, and off the globe operation, it doesn't happen overnight. And in fact, I just got a report because I was back at NASA yesterday. I just got a report. It took us a total of 4 years to get from high risk to managing risk. And then it took an additional 4 more years to get into a place where it was a much lower risk for the United States government, and that the cyber report card was in a range that made the White House and national security folks more comfortable with our posture. But it's really hard because we work with lots of countries and do these things. So I bring this up because it's the invisible risk that can usually bite you the worst. AI is coming, and it is both an invisible risk because if you don't control your network well, you're not really sure who's using AI on their computers, their work computers and things like that. And if you allow for personal computers to be used, which is fine, again, they're possibly bringing in AI that hasn't been checked. So your business data could be leaving and being used to train the large language models and things like that. So as I close, because we need time for questions, I just want to say that it really just boils down, whether it's cybersecurity, AI, emerging tech, quantum encryption and readiness and things like that. It's about preparedness and response, and it equals resilience. And that begins with understanding, which is all about understanding the risks of your business, including those businesses that can operate and use space operations. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. That was absolutely fantastic and great to hear as well. It kind of scares me, the fact that you have to use Band-Aids and stuff like that within a spacecraft to put everything back together. But I have seen the film, so I get that. Right. Well, we're going to be moving on to questions and answers. So I'm going to be passing back to Srihari, who's going to moderate that. We should be opening up the chats as well, so people could put, if you don't want to actually ask it out loud, you can put your questions in there as well. So without further ado, Srihari, back over to you.
Thanks, Doug. And that was a really insightful talk by Renee. Always love to hear some nice stories. Let's start with some question and answers. I think before we take up from here, there's one from YouTube that I will start with. There's Ranjini Ganesh, who asked, can you elaborate a little bit on how big corporates can protect themselves against AI cybercrime? Sometimes they're not able to figure out whether it is AI generated or really news from corporate head office. And also adding to that she says that it's not only a lack of knowledge, but also the support system is very slow and not efficient. So maybe Chris, Nimit, you might want to come in on this.
Yeah, if I just come in quickly, then I'll hand over. So I don't think AI changes the game in terms of basic approach. It's just another vector, another way of attacking is through AI, which is a bit cleverer perhaps. So it's just having a high quality, I would start by saying information security risk management approach, but also cybersecurity risk management approach. So it's understanding what vulnerabilities you have within your organization, understand what the threat landscape looks like, and then marry the vulnerabilities to the threats. And where you have a match, you then need to look at, well, how big a risk is that, and then address that. When I say understanding your vulnerabilities, every organization will have different vulnerabilities. So an organization that manufactures cars will have a completely different set of vulnerabilities to one that is a bank, for example. So what you're vulnerable to will be different by organization. So you need to have a high quality information security risk management program, cybersecurity risk management program, remembering the point that Renee was just making about resilience. If you manage risks really effectively, you become resilient. So resilience is an outcome. So operational resilience, cyber resilience, is an outcome of effective information security, cybersecurity risk management.
Yeah, so I'll just add to that. Disinformation campaigns nowadays are used by companies as well. So even competitive companies kind of use that from that perspective. So specifically when it comes to listed companies, sensitive information, maybe about quarterly sales or something like that. So if the news information is something like that, then I think it's best to go back to the source itself and have that validated, have that fact checked. Not everything can be fact checked from that perspective, but given that things go viral very quickly, yes, often campaigns like this are picked up and called out. But yes, this is becoming a everyday kind of news as well, that such campaigns are being done, and the organizations need to be aware of it as well. So many organizations have actually started to kind of see this as a new kind of threat.
Wait, we have a hand raised by Mr. Vijay Kumar. You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, am I audible, Mr. Murthy?
Yes, you're audible. Please go ahead.
My question is to Rama ma'am. Mr. Murthy conducted a poll when he started the discussion that how many for the independent directors, like about 48% of the people feel that we don't have there's a deficiency of knowledge among the board of governors. So regarding the AI. So in this context, my question to Rama ma'am is, how can independent directors leverage AI analytics to enhance strategic decision making and improve overall board effectiveness?
Sure. Thanks, Vijay Kumar. I was a little surprised by the poll outcome, but that is the audience response, so cannot comment on that. The way I would look at it is, it is important to remember an independent director on the board is not always a hands-on technocrat. Quite often, right? There may be one, increasingly they're infusing boards with people with that technology background and, with a technocratic experience. But every board member will not be a technocrat because there are different parts of governing an entire enterprise and providing board advisory. The way I would look at it is it's not just AI, any of the new emerging technologies. Board members can, or an aspiring board member or a current board member, can always request for briefings by even their own CTOs or ask for an expert session. It need not necessarily be part of a board agenda. It can be, you can request for such a briefing, and I'm sure the companies and the management team would literally support or take out that time to be able to spend the extra half an hour or 1 hour prior to a board meeting or in between when you have some lean time with the CTO of the organization or the chief digital officer. And what tools you need, it's not so much that you're going to use some tool to make a decision, right? You need to look at, is the executive management empowered enough with those technology tools where, let's say tomorrow, in treasury management, I'm just using one example, right? In a lot of organizations, usually treasury management used to be the least used to be the function where least technology used to be infused. Whereas now you see, even in a function like treasury management, a lot of organizations are relying on AI and analytics and big data, maybe third-party solutions to be able to make those investment decisions or de-risking investment portfolios, moving investments. So I think a role of a board member is not to become the technocrat, but to look at what are the emerging technologies and the risks and ask for those briefings if if the board member himself or herself is not from a technology background, because sometimes you may be coming from the domain background, like you're a manufacturing expert, you're a supply chain expert, because you need all of those skills within the board. The way I would look at it is request and ask for it. For example, I come with 35 plus years in the technology domain. but I am now on the board of a couple of some NBFCs. So I knew all the technology and data protection regulations across the world, coming from central banks and data protection authorities. But I do a deep dive study, and sometimes if I want a little more deeper insight, I do ask for it.
Great. I'm sure that answered the question in a lot of depth. We've got a hand raised by Kushagra Agarwal. You may please unmute yourself and ask.
Hello, everyone. Thanks a lot for a great, insightful session. I have a query. In the event of a cyber crisis or breach, how can AI be used to support decision-making and enhance crisis management response times?
Anyone like to jump in on that?
Sorry, I missed the last part. What was... I missed the last part of the question. Could you just...
So, Nimit, I think the question was that in the event of a cyber crisis or breach, how can AI be used to support decision-making and enhance crisis management response times?
Okay. So, I mean, most of the organizations have a very defined playbook or a standard, response kind of a mechanism that is kind of, made available. And use of AI is largely in terms of, I would say responses that are required, based on the type of attack and everything. We haven't seen use of AI as such in a human interaction response, I would say. Those use cases are more in terms of, the normal automation in terms of, answers to customer queries and those kind of things. So I would say to that extent, AI technology is largely from a response perspective, if you look at it from an incident response perspective, largely they are used in the detection by the technology teams themselves, in response in terms of, again, response to the threat itself, not as essentially as part of the incident response process from the public consumption perspective. That would be my viewpoint.
Great. There's a question on the chat where Krishnan is asking, can you please give an example of deep fake technology to understand this concept? Anyone have an interesting example?
I can speak to this if you like. So there was a TV program broadcast in the UK just this last week exploring scamming and deepfake. And it sounds bizarre. So this lady had seen something on Facebook or the internet and had clicked on it, and it had gone through, and it was a message from people may or may not know this, but a 1970s pop star called Donny Osmond, who was asking for money contributions to something. And this lady was a big Donny Osmond fan, and she kind of connected and got a personalized video from Donny Osmond speaking to her, using her name, talking to her. And it genuinely looked like Donny Osmond was filming this piece to camera, asking for money. I mean, why would Donny Osmond need money? That's another question. Yeah, I'm sure he's got bucket loads, but it was so convincing until you looked at the little hints, and it was the mouth wasn't quite right when he was speaking, so the AI doesn't quite get the mouth right, and ears don't appear quite right, and fingers also another problem. But if you weren't looking for it, you could easily have been sucked into it. And as she was a big Donny Osmond fan, she was about to send him some money, and it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible.
Murthy, I can
So
add a point.
Yes, Ms. Rama, you can go ahead and then.
No, I wanted to say that, this entire deepfake thing it comes in under the category of cyber influence operations, because it could be they're basically synthetic videos, right? Which can be used to defame a head of state. It could be head of a company. You want to impact a certain sector or a certain country. So it broadly comes under the cyber influence operations, which are basically in simple language like a fake video, but there is technology that is being used to create these synthetic videos.
And my addition to this is the technology for evaluating videos in particular, on data. You can fact check through a number of places, although you can also keep misinformation going through fact checking. But on the video, there's technology is advancing in terms of identifying whether the video is AI driven or it's actual video in that. The success rates are in the 90s, but it's not high enough to be what we would call a perfect model. So from a business perspective, if you rely on images in your business, then probably worth evaluating some of the technology for AI video reviewing to see if you need to bring that into your environment. Unfortunately, on the personal side, the tools they run from 93 to 97% success rate, but that 3%, especially if in your personal life, your Donny Osmond fan life, it's hard. Frankly, and this has actually worked. My father's 87 years old. He's with me, so I have to be a little quieter right now. And that is he did get a scam, and seniors are definitely a target, but now he takes to calling me and saying, this is what I got, and describing it. And I appreciate that, even though sometimes it's like, okay, but he hasn't been scammed since, because I'm like, wait a minute, mouse over and read me the email address. And no one's email address is 126853.be whatever. So get smart on it, and in the business as a human, just as a personal person, but then go to these tools if your business needs to rely on information and videos and scan that stuff to get them to a better place.
Just to add, the rise of the deep fakes. The more interesting things that make the movies and the interesting documentaries and make the news are the videos. But years and years ago, learning cybersecurity, I think all of us actually learned about man-in-the-middle attacks. So that is also deep fakes. It can be an email, it can be a text message. So the man-in-the-middle has become more and more with the proliferation of AI, because it can be like thousands and hundreds of thousands of man-in-the-middle attacks that can go on. So the deep fakes increase, not just in video, it can be on any form. So like Renee is correctly saying, so when you get an email, check where the email is coming from. When you see a web link, check the web link to see whether actually it's the company name or there is just a dot in the middle that is actually changing the email address, the URL completely. So all of that needs to be checked more and more. So that's the bad actors. So on the good side, also we need to start harnessing the powers of AI to actually counter the bad actors.
Yeah, some great points. And in fact, in very recent news, I think there was the NDTV World Summit that took place recently, where Mr. Sunil Bharati Mittal of Bharati Enterprises had shared his experience, where one of his chief finance persons sitting in Dubai received a voice request from him that to transfer a large sum of money. And he, luckily that person called back to confirm and realized that it was fake. And when they actually heard the recording, right down to the pauses and the, phrasing of the words, it was very, very, very uncanny. So I think the point mentioned about always having a second or third level of check before actioning anything that seems suspicious is very relevant. There was a question in again linking to money and banks, right? We all bank, and that's where bad actors often target. So what's the current? Sudha is asking that what's the current level of AI technology being employed in banks, maybe in India and worldwide? Maybe you think, Shashi, you could take this one?
Yeah. So globally, we have seen many of our customers being banks. Globally, we have seen AI actually coming into place more than in cybersecurity, more in the front line now. Call centers, collection centers. So earlier it was like the first level that you spoke to, that was AI or your chatbot on your screen. But now all the way up to manager, some banks actually use AI technology. So that actually comes with a lot of data being exposed to the internet, to the AI itself, to basically see who you are, what your credit scores are, what you like to do, what kind of purchasing patterns you have. So that itself increases the level of risk that comes into being.
Great. Yeah, Chris, sorry, you wanted to.
Yeah, I was just going to say we are starting to see some of the banks piloting. They're not rolling out as such, but credit decisions and lending decisions based on AI, which it's positive and negative. So positive, it's learning from historical data and applying that to the credit application and making a decision on that. But if we go back to the definition of AI, sometimes we don't fully understand the output given the input. So some of the decisions coming out, you kind of go, that seems odd. But there's also the fairness aspect, which is under the UK regulatory framework that's being implemented. With automated decisions, you need to offer the right to challenge the decision. So if you are declined a credit card or whatever, then you need to be able to, and if it's an automated decision, you need to be able to challenge that, which makes sense until you think, well, hang on, that came through an AI system and I can't explain the decision. So you've got this really bizarre situation. But yeah, so it's starting to happen.
Murthy, I can add a point.
Yes, ma'am.
So, I mean, in terms of AI use cases in banking in India, particularly, I think it's quite all pervasive. Lot in customer service, chatbots. I think already Shashi talked about it. But I think the significant business use cases of AI has been in fraud and risk analytics. And a lot of the, anti-money laundering or any one of those softwares use a lot of AI. There's a lot of RPA or the process automation that happens where you are automating a lot of your processes. All of them are AI based, and most of the new fintech solutions are pretty much AI is part of the foundation stack.
That's great to know. I think great insights on that front. There is one more question, ma'am. Maybe you could take that again. Is Varasi is asking how government perhaps could help MSME sector in building a resilient framework for cyber risks. Can government provide any support, or will large organizations chip in? And especially to the point I think you mentioned during your presentation that it's the weakest link that always gets you.
So I do agree that is a big challenge given the size of the MSME industry, where we do see some progress being made is the focus around cybersecurity frameworks for MSMEs. Industry actually is coming forward where increasingly, for example, a large enterprise would go for a SOC, right? Whereas now we are seeing shared SOCs I see now even CISO as a service. Whereas because some of the MSMEs can't even have an experienced CISO in-house. So there are service providers who are giving CISO as a service, which means everything to do with the CISO function is being provided by a provider. There are now graded cybersecurity frameworks that are coming, which can be adopted by MSME. Many of the new security stacks from the industry in India, the startups, they're all cloud based, so that you don't need to invest in a lot of the on-prem infrastructure and have that in-house capacity. So I think the provider industry is coming forward now to come up with those optimized offerings for MSMEs. I would say that, and then CERT and other organizations do do a lot of capability building and training programs to be able to do it. But still, we have a lot more to drive actually.
Great points. Anyone else have a thought on that from practical experience? I know Renee, maybe NASA works with a lot of vendors as well, and you might have to oversee their security policies very carefully.
Yeah, I think third-party risk has been mentioned a couple of times in the presentation, and while this has been banned by the EU, perhaps if you think of cybersecurity and frankly AI, right, the data that goes into AI, think of it as glitter or maybe chalk, right? When we all used to do things manually, it gets on your hands, glitter gets on your hands, and then if you don't go straight to wash it, that glitter or chalk gets all over everything. Well, that's what third-party risk is if I come in and I shake your hand and I've got chalk or glitter on it, I've now handed over to you the chalk or glitter, and you think of that as a cyber virus, or you could think of it as a potential executable that gets in your, or it could be the data from the AI is actually not that good, and I've just handed all that over to you on your hand, and I've scattered it all over your floors and on your wall. And so I always try to give an image to third-party risk because it's an area where people are pretty blind by it. But you look at Delta and what happened to them and their high reliance on a particular platform, and how it took out their ability to do business, and that's a third-party risk. When you use a platform, Microsoft 365 or Zoom, you're taking on that risk from that use, and what does that mean for your operations and how integrated into it. So I like to give people an image of what third-party risk might look like, because it's everywhere in what you do, and you just got to be really careful. And you got to investigate. There's lots of ways you can investigate third-party risk, including parts and components. Mm-hmm.
That's a fantastic insight as well. Thank you. We've got a hand raised from Mr. Ashok Kumar Gupta. You can please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Good evening, everybody. I had a question in my mind that in this modern times, when there is a rivalry between the two nations, or more precisely, you can say the enemy nations, there may be mass cyber attacks on the technology, on the different parts of that country. So what precautions should be taken in these situations?
I can take a shot at because I engaged with government. So in such, Mr. Ashok Kumar Gupta, I think here this is where the national security apparatus of the country and particularly CERT plays the biggest role, right? The Computer Emergency Response Team. They are continuously monitoring, or even there are other organizations, particularly from a military perspective, their cyber defense agencies, whatever the armed forces have, and organizations like CERT play a very important role. I think they are the ones who look at any cross-border threats and threats from state-sponsored or state-supported actors. I think they do that. It's not really possible for every company to invest in that. It usually happens at a central government level. And of course, the technologies that you deploy and the threat intelligence feeds that you subscribe to, that a large enterprise subscribes to, also gives you some visibility if there is a persistent campaign from a state-sponsored threat actor.
I'll just add on to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. I think, very, very, very valid inputs. And I think as a duty from a very organization perspective, right, it becomes very important for us also to relay down threats that, we are seeing back to organizations like Certain. because that's where they can connect the dots and actually find that, yes, this is a threat coming from, a threat actor, which is like, a cybercrime gang, or actually a nation state level. So, if I were to say one thing which, we as an organization need to do, actually report back on the cyber incidents. It's no longer, a shame to have a cyber incident. I mean, it's good practice actually to report it back to the regulatory agencies.
Yeah, just one add too, if companies are operating globally and if they're in domains like critical infrastructure, energy, oil and gas, they're banking and that, staring at you, Sashi, I'm like, why can't I not think of banking? And I would say that if you're a large global company, there are ways to participate, at least in the United States. I'm sure this exists across that in briefings, in threat briefings for your particular domain area. So if you're large and global and you don't know if you're getting this, ask either the CEO or the chair of the board and begin to get that, including at the board level, so that you get relevant information in a non-classified environment, which helps you then make sure that your enterprise risk model and your risk mitigation efforts are aligned with the threats that you face.
Just to
Great.
add, a quick comment just to add to it.
Go ahead.
Some years ago, I was part of a project that we assessed the critical information infrastructure of the country in Sri Lanka. So at that point, we looked at certain case studies and we studied a neighboring country, India. So the critical information infrastructure in India has been recorded and categorized on priority levels. So like Ms. Vedashri actually mentioned, the CERT has a priority level, that there are certain ones with military level priority. So the risk on that risk register, it's managed grade by grade. So it's all overlooked very, very conscientiously.
Great. Thank you for those insights. Unfortunately, we have to bring this Q&A to a close. I'm very sorry if I couldn't ask your questions. However, there is one last question that I will pose to the panelists, and we'll end with that, which is from Neelam Kaushal, who said, would love to have a few book recommendations on the subject, please. So maybe I can start since I had a head start on that question. I'll give my recommendation. It's a book that I've really enjoyed, is by Karthik Hosanagar, who's from Carnegie Mellon University. And he has a book called A Human's Guide to Machine Intelligence, How Algorithms Are Shaping Our Lives and How We Can Stay in Control. I'll drop that in the chat. And if anyone else wants to add their recommendations, please feel free to jump in.
An interesting book I read is Scary Smart, The Future of Artificial Intelligence and How You Can Save Our World. That's by Mo Goddard. I will edit the chat as well.
Great. Anyone else? Or you feel free to drop it in the chat if you feel that's more preferable. All right, I think with that, I can hand it back to Doug. And thank you so much. It was such a pleasure being part of this panel and listening to these excellent insights and great questions as well. I'm sure we've all taken a lot from this and go back a little bit smarter than when we joined. Thank you, and back to you, Doug.
Thanks, Shrey. And what a fantastic session. And thank you so much to all the speakers. What amazing insights from so many different people. Actually, there was a direct question that came across to me, which was, how do we actually implement this within boards and everything like that? And as a guy who works in terms of, advising boards and helping boards with terms of communication, something which we mentioned obviously about books, in my book, I always say you can make anything happen in life with an acronym of MAKE, which is mindset, actions, knowledge, and energy. And in terms of mindset, we need to get into the growth mindset that actually AI and cybersecurity, or especially AI anyway, the tools that we have is not a risk to our business. It's actually a tool that we can utilize and partner with to be able to develop our business quicker, faster, and easier in so many different ways. And one of the things that Chris said, obviously, as well, which I've actually had, in terms of one of these recommendations or testimonies sent through with somebody using an AI-orientated bot doing it for you. So more and more so now, when people like myself and you guys probably get testimonies from your clients, I think this really makes LinkedIn so much more important. And I think we can take LinkedIn recommendations and cut and paste them onto our own websites rather than just having anything else, because at least they have someone they can connect the real testimony to. Because I have to say, with my book, I actually put a nice little testimony from Barack Obama and sent it to my mum, and she thought it was real. And it just really shows you what you can get. So we need to be very careful on that as well. And there's many apps out there that you can do it with. Barack Obama, Taylor Swift, Donald Trump, whoever you want, you can have them speak and tell everybody how great you are in terms of what you have to offer. So I think that's very important to have that. And that way, by using LinkedIn recommendations, you can have a look, you can actually contact the people and ask the people, are they real? And obviously with the institute directors and where we are, I think that's very apt as well. So that's mindset, and growth mindset is very important. Actions is obviously understanding where you are and where you're looking to go to. And I think implementing, most people have ChatGPT now, right? But there's so many more tools out there in terms of AI that we can utilize to help in terms of efficiency within our business. And that comes down to Kay in terms of knowledge, in terms of learning about them, understanding other businesses that have already implemented them, doing masterminds like this. And this is why it's so good to come to meetings like this, meet such distinguished speakers like we've had today, and understand what are other businesses doing, what are other boards doing, how are they communicating that effectively to their teams to get buy-in and not see it as a threat as well. And that comes down to the last part of my MAKE acronym as such, which is energy. And that's that positive energy that you portray across in terms of your communications, engagements with your teams, with your companies, and with your clients, to make sure that everybody's buying in, engaged with that, so that you can implement these new ideas and tools. So I hope you've all got some great ideas there. Please contact, you've got all the names there. Please contact the speakers on LinkedIn. Probably is probably one of the best places to follow them. Look what they do. I'm sure they've got some great other speeches they've done. They've probably got some great publications they've done as well. And you can see they've got some great work and insights as well. So again, I just want to say a massive thanks to everybody who's come along today. I want to really thank all the speakers. I'll just read them in the order that I can see them. Obviously, Srihari, Rama, Nimit, Chris, Sashi, Renee, and Christina. I just want to say a massive thank you for all of you today. I really, really enjoyed it. I'm sure everywhere I've seen in the chat box, there's been many people have said some amazing things about you guys. So make sure you keep in touch with these people. Honor them, maybe with a LinkedIn little kind of tick on their recommendation in terms of how great they were at speaking today, because they deserve it. They've given their time for free, and they really do deserve it, because it's such a fantastic insights that we've had today. If there's any other questions, obviously feed them through on LinkedIn. We will be doing more of these webinars, obviously, with the Institute directors. I want to say a massive thank you, obviously, to the Institute directors for India for all they do and all these type of webinars. There'll be more coming as well. And again, just to finally, again, thank all our sponsors in terms of NASDAQ, in terms of BitScore, in terms of Cybertech, in terms of BoardPack, in terms of Gujarat Fluorochemicals, in terms of Halex Consulting, and as Taxman as well. So a big, big thank you to our sponsors, a big, big thank you to all of you, our distinguished guests, our distinguished speakers, and thank you again to the Institute Directors of India. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Namaste, as they say.